morning, Life Point Crossing. Hi. My name's Ross, and I'm sorry that you're going through what you're going through, but I'm glad you're here. Do any of you guys like water, like oceans, ships? I actually got a yes. I think it was before we came here, maybe after we came here, I read somewhere that of every major U.S. city, Kansas City is the furthest one from any sort of ocean or coast. Doesn't really bother me. I think the ocean's pretty, but I don't care. I'm not really a water or a boat guy, but I've been on, plenty of boats for whatever reasons. When people would come to visit us, we'd go whale watching, things like that. Sometimes it was awesome. Sometimes it was, very, very much like being disappointed on a boat. But that's a stolen joke. I heard a comedian say that once, but it was funny because it was true. Have you ever been, I'm sure I know at least some of you like to travel, you've been on, maybe even if not the ocean, like a Great Lake or some sort of body of water that's big enough where the conditions in the water can really make a difference, can really make a difference. How were your conditions? Were they good? I know you hoped they were good, right? Everybody, I'm sure the day they go out, you're watching the weather and you're hoping and you're saying, I hope we get wonderful, calm, beautiful conditions to enjoy God's wonderful creation. And when you're out on a boat and things are calm, it's so smooth. It's so easy. There's no problem. There's no trouble. You feel like even if it's the first time you've been on a boat in your life, you could captain. I mean, it's like driving down the street, except there aren't even lanes or other traffic. It's just easy. You're on a boat. But maybe you don't get the nice, calm conditions. Maybe it's a little bit choppy. Maybe it's a lot choppy. Maybe it's a small boat and it's kind of rocking back and forth a little more than you'd like, and the waves are splashing up into your face, and it's a little bit scary. Maybe even quite a bit scary. Do you ever think about, or do you ever talk to the captain in a situation like that? Because here's what happens, is I know what happens is on the day you go out, you're hoping, maybe even praying, if you're a praying person, that God, show us your favor by giving us a warm, beautiful, sunny, calm day to enjoy your wonderful creation. But then when it becomes evident that that prayer is not being answered as you wished, sometimes you might pray again, but your prayer changes. Here's how, maybe if you're even very wise, here's what your prayer turns into, is, Father, I pray that you have shown us your favor by putting us on this boat with a captain whose prayers for calm waters you have consistently ignored. Father, I pray that you've put us with a captain who you've put through incredible storms, the likes of which I could never even conceive of. In fact, I pray that he is a man who loves you and that he prays to you, but right now he sees no even reason to pray, because to him, this appears to be like a very normal, average day, and he's grateful for it, because to me, this kind of feels like a nightmare. You've heard the cliche, right, that calm seas don't make good sailors. Even if you haven't heard that, immediately you understand. If you want to be able to navigate through treacherous circumstances, the way that you learn to do that is by navigating through treacherous circumstances. And so none of us want to be going through the storms. I don't either. I don't like pain. I don't like struggle. I don't like difficulty. But when you're out in the middle of the ocean and it seems like a storm's kicking up, we all kind of do the same thing, don't we? As we start looking around and hoping that there's somebody there with us on that boat who's been through something serious. We hope we're not the most experienced person there. We hope there's someone who's saying like, oh yeah, I've seen this. Oh yeah, I've been through this. In fact, I've been through worse than this, and here's how it's going to go, and here's how we're going to make it through. Because getting through what you're going through, well, this is going to be kind of coming at us from two different angles today, and we'll sort of see it from both. But we're going to look at some incredible words from 2 Corinthians. It's a letter written by a man called the Apostle Paul to the believers in the city called Corinth. And this is from chapter 1, way back, at almost the very beginning. And here's part of what he says. He says, all praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, very good. He says, God is our merciful Father. We're happy about that. And the source of all comfort, and he comforts us in all of our troubles, so that why? Well, so that we then can comfort others. It says, when they're troubled, we will be able to give them, look, the same comfort that God has given us. It comes from God to somebody, and then from that somebody to somebody else. And the more we suffer for Christ, the more God will shower us with his comfort through Christ. And even when we are weighed down with troubles, why is it? It's for your good, for your comfort and salvation. And for when we ourselves are comforted, we'll certainly comfort you. And then you can patiently endure the same things we suffer. We're confident that as you share in our sufferings, you will also share in the comfort God gives us. Now, if you're going through something and you read that, something that is not explicit in these verses, but that's very helpful to know and to understand, is who this is being written by, which I just said it was written by the man we call the Apostle Paul. But you may read that and think, okay, right, sure, but do you even know about what I'm going through? What do you really know about struggles? Great question. Not in these verses, but if you continue reading, even in this, we call it a book, but it's really a letter that we call 2 Corinthians. If you get to chapter 11, he starts giving a list of some of the things he's gone through, and it is wow. He starts with, once I was stoned. That's with rocks, not herbs. That's supposed to be execution. Nobody is ever supposed to be able to say, I once was stoned. You're supposed to be dead. He says 5 times I received the 40 minus 1. Here's what that means, is that they determined that 40 lashes with a whip would kill you. And so if they wanted to literally beat you within an inch of your life, they'd give you 39. So he says, okay, well, I've been through that 5 times. To go with the stormy seas motif, he says, once I was shipwrecked and spent a night and a day out at sea. You imagine like at the end of Titanic, you're just clinging to the log a day and a night. How just unbelievably helpless must that feel like? So this is a guy who's been through crazy things. If ever there was anybody who was qualified to write about what it's like to get through some stuff, this is the guy right at the moment he's writing. In fact, later he's going to be, actually literally executed for following Jesus, but clearly that hasn't happened yet as he's writing this. And so he says, you know what? Since I've been through some things, you guys, I know you're going through some things. I know you're going to have some things coming up. And listen, I've received some incredible things from God by going through those things. And so now I'm going to be in a better position than anybody else who hasn't been through those things to help you through, to help you navigate. And so what will help you get it through what you're going through, really where he's pointing to here is very simply this, is to find and accept support. Experience matters. Just like the captain of the ship that you were on a couple minutes ago, if you're in the middle of a storm, something that will be fantastically helpful for you is to have some people around you who have been through some similar storms, or whether they're exactly similar or not, who have been through some real things. And then what he was saying is the same things that you learned, the same comfort that comes from God through those things, they'll be able to help you get through what you are going through. Look again a little bit at some of these verses, because what he says is so clear. He says, praise to God, right? The Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. He's our merciful Father, and he comforts us in our troubles. Why? Okay, think of this from the perspective of if you're here and you're going through something, right? You're the one who's going to be on the receiving end of this. He comforted somebody else. Why? So they can comfort you, right? It says, and even when somebody else is weighed down with troubles, why is that? It's for you, for your good, for your comfort and salvation. And when they're comforted, for sure, they're going to want to pass that on to somebody else, right? And then it's not that whatever you're going through magically disappears necessarily. You might still have to patiently endure, but you can patiently endure, and you get through. So clearly there are 2 pieces to find and accept support, but really I feel like for a lot of us probably, maybe the majority of us, or maybe it's just me and I'm projecting that on all of you, but probably the majority of us, maybe the most difficult, the biggest roadblock is to just be able to accept, right? To accept the support. That's okay. In fact, that's good. In fact, that's part of what we're created for. There are people around you who have been through some really, really stormy seas. And they're able, and in fact, they probably are desirous of being able to help put those experiences to work, to help somebody else through. You think about this. Really, just by childhood cancer. You can count on it. You know that's true. There's some sort of ministry to people who have substance abuse addiction or abuse. You know that that's going to be started by somebody who in their history had issues with substance abuse or addiction, or at the very least, someone in their family or someone very close to them did. It's interesting. I never really thought about this, but this is absolutely true. Literally every church that's ever existed has been started by and pastored by and composed of people who at one time were apart from the grace and mercy and forgiveness and love of Jesus. Right? But then were so impacted by that they decided that they wanted to, or maybe even felt compelled, like they had to be a part of something that was then going to hold that out to other people. Now, these are really just larger scale examples of the exact same principle. Charles, when he was 12. And something that he at that time had never experienced. So guess what Charles does is he gets up and he leaves his friends to go sit with him. And he comes home and he's telling us about this, and he tells us the truth. And he said, I don't even really like him. He's not really fun. He's not cool. But that's been me my whole life, and I know how hard that is. And then guess what happens in the next year? Is actually another extremely awkward kind of kid shows up. This is like 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. Maybe they're all awkward kids at that age. But I don't remember if the lunch table dynamic was the same, but in general, the dynamic was the same. And so Charles, again, goes way out of his way to include this kid because he knows what it's like. And of course, looking back, you can tell, you can see what's going to happen is they end up being great friends eventually. This is actually his entire graduating class as seniors. There they all are. That's the whole group of them. And are still meaningful friends and develop really wonderful friendships. But he was telling the truth when he said at first it wasn't really even because he liked the kid or the other kid or either of them, but just in the most typically self-centered stage of life that anybody can ever be in. Teenage boy. Charles acts very, very differently. Why? Because he's been through too many times. And this isn't really the message, but just as a sort of aside, the pride that we had in the way he acted, man, that has to be a little similar, doesn't it, to the way God looks at us when we're doing something awesome for someone in our world, in our life. I just feel like that kind of has to be the case. So if you've been helped in a big way, isn't it true that there's something in you that wants to help pass that on to somebody else? I don't think Charles and I are the only people who have ever felt this, right? So to say that, all of that to say, there's somebody around you who wants to help. There's somebody around you who wants to be that support that they had. Or if they didn't have that support, that they desperately wished that they did have. I know we tend to be rugged and individualistic in the United States. I do too. I really do. I struggle with this. I want to feel like whatever my situation is, it's not somebody else's problem. I don't need their help. They don't have to get their hands dirty. I can take care of whatever it is. And there is, of course, I think there's something good about being responsible for yourself, but there's also something good about having other people in your life who you support one another. Isn't that, listen, God has put somebody in your life, right, strategically positioned around you to help you through, and they want to, right? Isn't it true that if that has been you who were helped, you want to help the other person in your life? If you knew there was somebody in your life who they needed a little boost that you could provide, you want to do that for them, right? You want to be that for them. And so how is it so difficult for you to believe that there's somebody in your life who would want to do that for you? God has put people around you. You can accept their support. You're not supposed to go through life by yourself. If you refuse that doesn't make you I'm just stubborn. It's just who I am. No, that's not who you are. It doesn't make you rugged and individualistic. That doesn't make you strong. What it makes you is really kind of stupid. And you will pay a high, and listen, unnecessary price for that. Nobody looks at a flock of starlings or blackbirds and says that they're weak because they're all together. They're starlings. They're supposed to be all together. You're a human being. You're not supposed to go through life by yourself. You're supposed to have family and friends and people who you help each other through. I feel like I say this on a somewhat regular basis, but I think it's really very profound that Genesis talks about us as created in the image of God, right? And so we reflect many of the characteristics of God. God himself existed in community with himself from before the world and the universe was created as Father, Son, Spirit, right? And so in much the same way, we are created for one another, to have interaction and meaningful life on life with one another. You're not created to go through life alone. You can accept the support that God has already probably put around you. You have to accept that you can accept the support. Again, that block I feel like is maybe the biggest for a lot of us. Maybe it is just me, I don't know, but I feel like maybe it's for a lot of us, and especially for those of us, listen, who are here on a Sunday morning. And listen, if you're watching online, I love that you're watching online and that you can watch online, but this is actually also one of the reasons why that's just really a great step to coming to being here. And being here, listen, this is, I would like to say, this is the starting point. It's not the finish line. Right, but it is a great starting point that, okay, good, so there's some people around you here, but let it be the starting point, right? Like, talk to some people. Let some people into your life. Go have lunch. Find a place to serve on a team that you can come and be a part of. Come consistently over a period of time to a small group. And here's what happens, is then there are people in your life. And find and accept support. Listen, isolation is an absolute killer. That is about the most dangerous thing that you can do to yourself, is to be isolated. Here's what neutralizes that, is having people in your life and living in community. You're not supposed to be going through what you're going through by yourself. And here's one of the fun things about this, actually, is this allows other people to have their pasts and their storms redeemed, which is one of my favorite concepts in all of creation. I said earlier in the series, whenever we're going through something, we always tend to ask, why is this happening? And generally the answer is, I don't know, and I'm not going to suggest that this is the answer. And if you're here and maybe I haven't really been talking to you so far, you don't feel like you're really in the middle of something intense right now, but now maybe we're flipping and now maybe this is for you, okay? But I'm not asking you to say that, all right, now because I get to help somebody else, that makes the soul-crushing pain that I went through for however long to be worth it. Now this is the answer. I'm not saying that. I'm not suggesting that at all. But here's what I am saying, is don't waste it. Here's what I am saying, is take a nod from Paul in these verses and put it to work. You've been through some stormy seas. Okay, well, use that, leverage that, to help some other people getting through what they're going through. In fact, let me say that that God has strategically positioned many of us to be that person for somebody else. Probably some of us right here, right now in this room are strategically positioned to be here for other people right here, right now in this room. Maybe not all of us at this exact moment. That it would seem to be awfully coincidental if that were the case, but absolutely for some of us. Because listen, here's what you're not supposed to do. Tell me how this doesn't make any sense at all. Are you supposed to just suffer so that eventually you can heal and then just move on and forget about it? No, put it to work. Put it to use in love and service to God and another human being. If you're going to go through the storm, let that be redeemed in somebody else's life, right? Be the one that you were so grateful for whenever it is that you were going through something, or if you were not, be the one who you desperately wished that you would have had. Don't spend your whole life learning everything that there is to learn about sailing through stormy seas and then just let it die with you. That doesn't make any sense. Don't waste it. Goodness, put it to work. And I don't know exactly how to say to do this other than just to be involved and available in people's lives. I decided against saying, at the end of the service here, here's how we're going to do this, here's how we're going to match up, is if you're in an abusive relationship, go back to that corner of the room, and if you're addicted to substances, come to this corner, if you're addicted to pornography, go to that corner, and then the rest of you just go find someone who you feel like you can help. I decided that wouldn't work very well, so I canceled that thought. You're welcome, but you just be available and be involved in people's lives. Listen, you can't be involved in everybody's life, but you can somebody. Right? None of us can everybody, but we all can somebody. You can be a part of the answer to somebody's prayer. How amazing is that? God has you here still for a reason, and it's not just to find out how the next season of Stranger Things ends. Somebody out there is feeling isolated and discouraged and all alone, and you can be that person for them. It is not a stretch to say that one of the main reasons why God has us here is to be caring for one another. You need to have people in your life. Listen, and then when you're struggling, they're already there for you, right? If you already have people in your life before the storm hits, guess what? Find and accept support. You already did the find. It's already done. You just built that into your life before anything even happened. And then for the accept support, well, how much easier is it to accept support from somebody who's already in your life, who you already know that you love them and that they love you, and you know that you would be wanting to do whatever you could to help them through, and all of a sudden find and accept support is just built into your, this is so easy now, right? This is almost like automatic. What a great thing to do, to build those relationships into your life before you're in the middle of whatever it is. It's much more difficult to find somebody to care if you're already in the middle of the storm when you decide to find and accept support. That said, if that is you, you can still do it. God has still put people around you who will be strategically positioned to help you through whatever it is that you're going through. And for those of you who already have gone through some things, you've had some storms, you've been supported on the stormy seas. You know you can leverage those experiences for someone else, right? It was all over these verses, wasn't it? Is the comfort that came from God, right? And it was interesting. He said he's the source of all comfort, but then, like what? Well, it gets passed on through the human being to somebody else. This is a big part of what we mean by living a bigger story. This is a big part of what it is to be Jesus to somebody around you. This is really, isn't this, there are very few privileges in life greater than being used by God to help somebody else through. Week 1, yes, keep faith in God. Right, week 2 was remember the why and you'll find the how. Week 3, find and accept support. Guys, you're going to get through. You can get through. You're going to be okay. But don't try to do it alone. Okay, let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your spirit and for your comfort. And thank you so much that you put people in our lives who are able to help us get through. And that really, ultimately, that still is coming directly from you. Father, thank you that those of us who have been through whatever we've been through, and we've all been through something, that maybe it's not something we would say is worth it or that we're happy about, but that also we can have at least a portion of that redeemed by passing along some things that we've been through to help somebody else who's going through what we've been through. Thank you that you're a God of love and mercy and forgiveness and redemption. And how beautiful that is. I'm still praying if you're here today and maybe you know nothing about comfort from God because you've never connected with him in the first place, and you hear things about like the comfort of his spirit, and then you have no real personal knowledge or understanding of what that is because you've never taken the step to connect with him and invite him to be the Lord of your life in the first place. Listen, today is your day. Your moment is right now. It's a very simple situation. Every one of us, we have sin in our lives. There were things that were wrong. We knew they were wrong. We did them anyway. And a just God isn't able to make that just go away. He wouldn't be a just judge if he did. But that's why Jesus. Oh, you talk about receiving comfort from God. How about forgiveness as he takes your sinfulness and we take his righteousness as he, by his perfect life and then sacrificial death in your place. That was him taking justice, absorbing justice that should have been each one of us for the sins that we commit, so that he takes our sinfulness and we take his righteousness and we become forgiven, adopted children of God. Listen, if that's you right where you sit, you can